in single adult ministry, huge issue. I think more so in this ministry than any ministry. Let's talk about 3 areas of leadership. First of all, recruiting. Secondly, training. And thirdly, motivating. And we can include workers too, recruiting workers and leaders. So let's start with that one first. What are some effective ways to recruit workers and leaders? What do you think?
I think you first of all observe who are your worker bees, who's willing to jump in and help, and take a look. Are they already on your leadership team? If not, visit with them, find out if they're interested in being on your leadership team.
Yeah, that's good because that identifies the passion right away.
Mm-hmm.
And the technical stuff can always be trained, but passion is hard to train.
It's modeled, isn't it? The
Modeled,
passion's
yeah.
modeled. Okay, that's good.
Then you can take those people that you already see that are naturally involved. You can approach them and kind of promote from those volunteer ranks that you have into your leadership team. And again, matching their passions and equipping them with the leadership skills as they go forward. Leaders aren't necessarily born, they're made.
Also promoting volunteers, from those volunteers you could ask your other leaders, are they good for leadership? And just seeing their volunteer time, you'll know that their passion is there for leadership.
They sometimes recognize things in others that we don't see.
Right.
And they can help us see that. Good.
I think too, you're trying to acquire a basic trust with your leaders and your workers. And I think that if you sense that over time and that they're there to be a servant, to serve God, to serve the group, to serve their pastor or their leader, I think over time you can determine if they're able to take on larger and bigger tasks in terms of the direction of the group.
And sometimes you just need to take a risk with somebody that you see their potential in them, but they don't see their potential, and then you invite them to come in and give them a shot.
Jason, that's so good. You do have to take a risk on people. As the ultimate leader of the group, whether you're pastor or ministry director, God will give you a sense of people, and if you sense something within someone, you give them that opportunity. Sometimes people need to know that they can fail, and they need to be given the opportunity to rise to an occasion. And you know what? If they don't completely do everything right or do it exactly the way you would do it, that's okay. Allow them to be themselves in the task, but recruit them, take a risk, and give them the opportunity to fail. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? They fail, and they learn from the process. They grow from it.
And many times your leadership will be commensurate to your vision and your purpose. If you have a big vision and a big purpose, you will attract excellent leaders because they want to gravitate towards something that they consider to be worthy of their best. And so you need to ask the big question. Will you join me in this monumental effort of reaching single adults? And you ask some sharp people that, and you'll be surprised how many will jump on board.
Absolutely.
Good. From the beginning, and as a person starting a ministry, people are afraid. They don't want to necessarily become a, quote, leader. But they'll be a helper or a worker because they're not sure of the vision yet. They're not sure of the group if they want to become real involved. So what would you suggest for the new people that are coming? How do we get them involved helping? Because helpers can produce leaders, right?
Sure.
Later. So what do you do? What kind of roles?
We normally would refer to those as servant leaders. In other words, that without them, this event or this evening or this ministry would not be a success without the participation. And sometimes it's hard to believe that somebody might be more organized or have better organizational skills than the leader, but often it does happen. And you'll find those in your group, and those are the ones that you go to and say, I noticed something about you. You have a gift of organizing, the gift of reaching out. Can you help us in these areas?
What are some areas you would have people help for a few times? You don't give them a turn, but they're helpers, they're workers. What areas would you ask them to
There's
do?
always set up, right, in these events, chairs and tables. We've mentioned this before, but it's so true that without this infrastructure, we wouldn't have success in our ministries.
We have some people who love to help with the food part, helping
Yes.
get it organized. They're really contributing and really play a vital role in
Yes.
the smoothness of an evening helping serve others. It's just great.
Plus the audio video side of things, and that's a great area to get men involved. A lot of times men are interested in those things, and if you can get them behind a soundboard or behind a camera or running lights or something, then they get into that.
Sure.
But it's important that when you have someone brand new, that you might give them a job description so that it's clear what your expectations are for them. And they can follow that better than if they don't have a feel for the ministry like some of the leaders might have.
Craig recently asked a gentleman if he'd like to be on our leadership team. Excuse me. And he said, "No, I don't want to be single all my life." So his concept was that if you say yes to leadership, you're saying no to any type of relationship in your life. And that's really not true at all.
No.
Definitely not.
And a way around that is to put term limits on your leadership roles. Have them serve for 9 months, and then at the end of 9 months, it's open for reevaluation. They don't have to feel committed forever.
I made that mistake years ago when I first started. We recruit leaders, and I didn't give them a time limit. I gave them a job description, but not a time limit. And after a year, 14 months, one of them came to me and said, "Dennis, I don't have time for this anymore." I said, "Well, why? You've done such a great job." "Well, my life has changed." It really wasn't a time issue. It was a passion, interest issue. They thought I was going to have them do it till Jesus came back. So I agree, Craig. Give them term limits. Give them term limits.
That's good.
And one of the things that we look at as far as a leader of a group or a pastor is that how to determine what big events are coming up in the next quarter or the next 6 months. If you have a big Christmas outreach or a Christmas party, a celebration, this is a great way to recruit new leaders who, after that Christmas event, they can determine, well, do you want to carry on in some of these same areas or not? Or was it a one-time thing until the next big event? We've had many do that.
It sounds like we're saying if they're involved, if people are involved on some level, whether it's helping or leading in the ministry, they're owning the ministry, right? Ownership.
Sure.
Even if they're remarried, you can use remarried couples in leadership.
Why is that?
Well, they know better than anybody else what it means to be a single adult.
They used to be
They've
single.
been there.
Yeah. That's a great point. I've seen that work in our ministry. We've had folks that I call our success stories of single adult ministry, and they've come through and they've found their significant other and they've gotten engaged and gotten married, and they love the single adult ministry. They're so thankful and grateful for it. And they're mature, they're well-rounded, they're great leadership material. So instead of sending them off into the choir, the men's ministry, or whatever, I invite them to come right back home and, hey, now be a part of the structure here and help other single adults do what you did. And so I think that's a tremendously untapped area, especially for a small church that maybe is struggling to have or find that special single adult that can lead it. You take the pressure off yourself. You don't have to have a single adult. You can have a remarried person that's been through and has that experience, and sometimes they make the best leaders.
They make good leaders for single parent ministries because they used to be a parent, one of them, by death of a spouse or death of a divorce or death of a marriage. We've been talking about recruiting. Let's move a little bit to training. How would you train leaders? What have you done in the past to train leaders?
We have actually used some of your books and materials you've developed, Dennis, from your textbooks you've written to other literature we have found that is very inspiring.
Thank you. I'll give you the $10.
I think the leadership in single adult ministry is very focused. It's very unique, and there aren't a lot of good materials out there. So we have to go to the source, and that is those good materials that have been written by national leaders like Dennis and others.
And some of you have.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just modeling leadership yourself, let them follow you. You show them what you're doing, and they're going to want to do what you're doing at one point because you're actually modeling the leadership. So I believe just modeling the leadership that will motivate them to be one of the leaders.
You cannot be a mentor to everybody in your singles ministry. You have to be selective and choose 2 or 3 or 4. But you have to be preparing to always place somebody else in your role.
Yes.
Train them to the level that you're doing, because that's replacing yourself. And many times leaders don't want to be replaced or train somebody for their replacement because they're insecure. But if you are truly modeling true leadership, you're always looking to somebody to take your job.
I've seen many leaders, like you said, Craig, they won't give it the ministry away and they won't grow. The ministry is inhibited from growth because they won't give enough of the responsibility and authority away, giving both.
That's so true, Dennis. And a little formula that I've abided by for a while, and it seems to work really well in this modeling aspect, Craig, that you were talking about, is basically you bring someone along beside you and they watch what you do for a period of time. And then for a period of time, you do it together. And then for a period of time, they do it and you watch what they do.
Good.
And then you release. So in 3 simple steps, I mean, that can be as quick as, 3 or 4 weeks. You go through this process of them observing and doing it together, then you pulling back and them doing it, and then you can release that person, and they've had on-the-job training.
Very good.
And it's not always just for replacing yourself. Sometimes it's replication, so that they can take the ministry and they have a model, and they go out, and then they go and they say, "Oh, I got this gift for you. I'm going to take it over here," and you've replicated yourself, kind of like church planting in a way.
We've hosted a few leadership retreats, getaway weekends, and it's just for the leadership team, and that's been inspiring. It's a time of brainstorming together, planning, and it's exciting to be a part of that itself, getting away.
Have you used any videos or guest teachers, or do you do all the teaching on leadership? Some of the people might be wondering.
Oh, we've used different people within our group on those leadership retreats, to a time of just sharing together, planning together, brainstorming, a lot of brainstorming, casting vision together as a group.
I think that one of the things you do when you have a leadership retreat like that, when you empower some of the people to be the host of the leadership retreat, all of a sudden there's a level of responsibility that they find themselves in that they've got to rise to be the leader of the leadership retreat. Now the leadership responsibility is on them. And boy, that's the time as a leader to step aside and really let your new leaders lead. They will lead well in those leadership retreats in duplicating what you've started.
Do you think key leaders are afraid to turn over responsibility and authority to other people in the group sometimes?
But I think with good cause. I think standing before your groups and actually teaching, whether it's teaching the word or teaching about the single life as a single Christian, that's a huge responsibility. I put teaching in groups more of the end game of responsibilities than maybe some of the other infrastructure training we talked about earlier. That's a very responsible position to be in, and I'm sure most leaders don't take that lightly to turn that over.
I also believe that leaders are really committed, and so they want to make sure that the new leaders are committed and want to follow through and not allow things to fall apart. So that's a concern.
Training is a big issue. I think it's really important in single adult ministry. John Maxwell says everything falls and rises on leadership, or rises and falls, one of the two. But we need to train and continually train because of the turnover of leaders, right?
Yes. Yes.
I think as a singles pastor, 21 years, about 30%, 25-30% of our leaders would turn over every year. So we had to recruit and train more leaders.
Yeah, and training is also a process of transferring your passion, which means motivating your new leaders. It's one thing to put printed materials and technical skill in front of your leaders, but keeping them motivated to show up every week and stay on task. Sometimes you might have to take some time off, so that they don't get burned out. But motivation is a big problem. Keeping leaders motivated in the game. That's part of the training process as well.
So what do you do? Good point. What do you do to motivate workers and leaders? What have you done?
I like using coaching because it not only reemphasizes areas where someone's successful in training, but it also reemphasizes what motivates them from the inside. Why are you actually serving in this? What gives you passion? Why do you show up every week? And that does the motivation on the inside, helps them reconnect with the Holy Spirit in themselves.
I think there's a paradox also in leadership in that I think the Apostle Paul had it right. Well, I'm not going to dispute the Apostle Paul, but he said that we are fellow workers together with Christ, in that our workers and volunteers we're on their level as we teach and lead, but yet someone's got to have the vision, the greater vision, to that others will follow.
Yes.
Whether you're a pastor or you're the director, and so that's kind of a paradox there.
Yeah, Rich, that has to do with relationships
Sure.
with your leaders. You have
Yes.
to maintain good relationships with them.
Yeah.
Craig, something that we've done for motivation too is that we've had an evening quarterly that's just team building. It's a fun night, there's no planning going on, and it's a time of refreshment. We also try to have some sort of purpose behind it too, whether it be spiritual encouragement, laughter, just kind of an affirming of one another.
Excellent.
Good.
Yeah, I used to try and take 2 leaders out for lunch a month and spend an hour with each one. Let's say we had 10 leaders. That means in 5 months I'd get around to all of them. But if we had more than 10, I need to delegate that to somebody else to help me, because leaders deserve to meet with you more than every 3 months.
Sure.
So we would go to lunch, we'd problem solve, we'd pray, we'd brainstorm, and I'd ask about the person and express an interest in them. I think we need to do that to train or motivate. That's motivating, actually.
And team building also, it builds trust.
Sure.
And if you can share openly, and you're not afraid to share with the
Yeah.
people that you're with, and you're not afraid to disagree with them, when you finally come to a decision and you have a goal, whether you agreed with that goal in the beginning, you're more likely to buy in, and you're going to be more motivated, and you're also going to be willing to say, I'm going to get that job done. And if I can't get it done, can you help me with that? Or I didn't get it done.
Sure. And Jason and I have been talking about that, in that, intimacy is something that's talked about a lot, but so very little practiced in our teams, in our life, in our families. But it's the most important, I think, to build that, to build what you're talking about there.
Yes. And if I've got a greeter team, then I'm going to help your hospitality team.
Yeah.
Because we're a team.
Right.
And we're not individuals.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
Exactly. The whole thing about relationship and trust, we're talking about basic elements of a relationship. You have no relationship without trust. And when you can look at a team member and entrust something to them, that builds them up. And we're talking about singles, some of them have been through very difficult things, so that's a healing process within them that is taking place, and they feel encouraged and supported, and that relationship there is of course there to build on that. But going back to something that Dennis said earlier, there is no responsibility without authority. There can be, but it's a mutated, disfigured, unhealthy thing. And so when someone feels that you have empowered them, that you've entrusted a certain aspect or a certain event or something or a certain part of the ministry to them, you've entrusted that to them, then they feel empowered. And that's very motivating, and they have ownership, and that just builds and snowballs going forward. But you've got to release. You've got to give them the authority to follow through, and that goes hand in hand with allowing people the freedom to fail.
I love it. The freedom to fail. Yeah.
Dennis, one thing that I know a lot of pastors would appreciate hearing is that prayer is a very strong motivator to your team.
Yes.
When your team sees you cry out to God for the ministry
Yes.
that He has laid on your heart,
Yes.
then it becomes their passion as well.
Yes.
They need
Good
to
point.
see your prayer,
Yeah.
crying out to the Lord. Yeah.
Exactly. Have you ever given any incentives to leaders? By that I mean, when a person finished their 9 months in our ministry, we would bring them up front of the group. We'd let them tell 3 or 4 minutes about what they did, what they enjoyed, and then we give them a $25 gift certificate to a restaurant. Ooh, nice. Take a friend to take them out. That would motivate the group. Oh, this is cool. This is great. Leadership, yeah, they treat us well. Have you ever done anything like that? Incentives?
Well, we certainly, whenever we can afford it, all of our leaders either get some kind of a discount or preferential treatment if we're going to go to some kind of retreat or something. It's most important to me that I get my leaders there.
Yeah.
Not that we don't want everybody there, we certainly do. But if a leader has a financial burden of some type and can't make it, well, I really go out of the way to try to get my leaders there
That's excellent.
because they're special in that regard.
Excellent.
And
One
that's
year-
just, I'm sorry,
No,
that's
you-
just recognizing the job that they've done. I mean, a lot of the times they go out there and do their own thing and do whatever they want, they need to do, and nobody recognizes that. So that makes the leader feel like, yes, I am doing something, and somebody's actually seeing what I'm doing.
That's right. That's right.
Dennis, I found birthdays, special occasions like that, a birthday card, a little gift card in there. It's something very simple, but it makes them feel supported and loved at a special time in their life. And so we've done that. It's been a big hit.
Single adults don't always have anybody to recognize their
Exactly.
birthdays. That's exactly right.
One year we got plaques. They gave us little verses that supported each and every one of us. We got them in a little frame.
Yeah.
I still have mine up.
Mm.
One year, as an appreciation, they gave us little gifts, individual gifts. We had this leader, and she had, I don't know, maybe she had this gift of giving, but like, I've got this little glass
Good.
penguin. And like, I got this penguin.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, but everyone got something special.
Sure.
It was great.
Special. Recruiting, training, motivating leadership. Very important in ministry. Thanks for your comments, sharing. People are going to benefit from this. Thanks a lot.
Dennis, you also talked about leadership class. We didn't talk about hosting a leadership class.
Right.
I think it's a great idea.
A 2, 3, 4 week class. I don't know if you've done it. We've done it in the past. Take leaders, current leaders, and potential leaders through it. In fact, we found leaders that way. One half of the people coming to the class, out of 20, one half of them were potential. They weren't leadership yet. And they explored what we were teaching, the organization of the ministry, accountability, authority, responsibility, all those great principles. And then about half of those would get involved in leadership. So, yeah, it was a great idea. Well, thanks. It was great talking. Good ideas.